Thanks for tuning in to Forward Obsessed. I'm really excited to have Mona Patel here as my guest. For those of you that don't know and haven't followed Mona Patel, you should start right now. Shameless plug to begin with. But she's an award-winning author and experience designer, and I'm here to talk about her business, Motivate Design, and some of the amazing ways that she's completely changing the definition of what research is so that people will actually value it for what it is, which I think is something we have nerded out a little bit about before the cameras went on, but hopefully that'll continue. So
yes.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Mona, obviously the audience is jazzed to hear about your background. I mean, the first question that everyone's probably asking is, how do I get some of these amazing clients, and how do I come work with you or for you? And we'll get to that, guys. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I'd love to just understand a little bit more about your background.
Sure.
And the journey that led to Motivate.
Yeah.
And then ultimately the complete reframing of what Motivate became.
Okay. So I was in school at Tufts, and I knew I wanted to have a background in psychology. I've always been fascinated with humans and human behavior, but as a good Indian girl, I was terrified of what my dad would say if I came back and said I majored in psychology. So I found this really cool combination. It was engineering and psychology. It's a study of how people think and work, and the application of that to product design. And not to date myself, but this was back pre-web, and so a lot of the work that we were doing was product, like physical products. So the first digital camera, where do you put the on button? How big is the on button? Do you put it next to the shutter button or not? You know, is it the same hand that you're using or not? So a lot of ergonomics, a lot of form factor, and I was just obsessed, I would say, with understanding how people use things and then factoring that into the design. And because that's just the way I grew up, learning about design, it never struck me that design was something that you do without research. Right. You know, the way I learned it was you study people, you understand people, you wait for the aha, for the reframe, and then you start designing. Because if you see the problem the way you see the problem, I don't think you're going to come up with really anything that impactful. So I started working in that space, making things easy to use. It was usability, it was called software ergonomics, I think at the time.
So pre-UX.
Pre-UX, and there was this project with Mini USA. So they're launching in the US, and they have this website. So remember, it's 56K modem, 800 by 600 screen. They have this pixel thing that zips around the page, and then you have to catch it, and that opens the navigation. And of course, no one knew how to use this, but the people who wanted the Mini were so excited about it that they didn't care what the experience was. And that was the project that was the most insightful to me, because it's not about making something easy. It's about understanding the real human motivation.
Right.
Why are people doing something?
There's
you can make something
factor,
very,
right?
You can make something super easy, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do it.
Right.
You can make something very hard, and I still will do it. Like think of CrossFit that we just explored.
Absolutely.
And so you have to understand the motivation. So I really started to move my career in that way. Got my master's in marketing, started working in this space, and then really just wanted to focus just on this. And it was during the 2009 recession. I worked at another agency, and for a variety of reasons, just felt like it was time to move on. And I was chicken about starting my own company, to be really honest. My family has entrepreneurs in it. My father's one, my brother's one. I am a designer. I'm a design researcher. And my brother was really important in helping me find my way to design out of my can't. I was very sure I can't do this. And that helped me see how important it is to help people move by past their can'ts. And really design is a way to help people do that, to help them try things that they've never tried before, do things they've never done before. And so that's what Motivate, that's how it started. It was really designed from a designer's mind to serve clients in a different way.
And this is really interesting. Obviously I know you, but so this is kind of fun for me, and definitely be great for the audiences. As a design founder myself, I empathize with that, but you went through a period of suffering, right? Where Motivate was so successful that you were a victim of your own success or not. And here you are, this almost 50-person company at the time, right? Just under 50.
That's when we met,
And when we met, and you were like, I'm not happy.
I hate this.
I hate this. How did I end up here, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting, because many people are wondering, how do I get these clients? How do I get this fame, this success, right? I want to be a creative director. I want to be a XXX, whatever it is. Yeah. And then they get that. You essentially manifested what you wanted, and then you found yourself with this 50-person company, and you're like, whoa, hold up.
That's not what I want. Yeah.
So what happened? I mean, I'm dying to hear that.
That's such a great question. It crashed on me. I think that's the best way I can describe it. I just remember this feeling of claustrophobia, because I had this company that I had created because I met so many wonderful people that I wanted to work with. And we had the clients and we had the ability to hire. So it was just kind of matchmaking and having fun. Then we had this one client who had to pause a pretty big, over $1 million project. And so I should have laid off people at that time. I didn't, because I don't believe in layoffs.
Yep.
And so,
amen to that.
Yeah. And so I held on to people. And as you know, running a company, payroll is payroll. And so if you're holding on, if you have 50 people, it's a pretty big payroll.
Yeah.
So you're going to be about $1 million in debt very quickly.
Yep.
And it's all because I didn't pull the trigger and move fast enough. And that weighed on me.
Yeah.
So then, like when you are a first-time leader, I think you mentioned it earlier,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And I was thinking about that phrase of like, why do we qualify it with first-time leaders or leaders?
Yeah.
But you feel like a first-timer during that time, and you don't know what you're doing, and you feel like everything you're doing is wrong, and all of a sudden you're sinking.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt. And I still had a business, and I still had to keep everybody's morale up, and it was a really, really tough time. And that's when I realized I had built that company to serve others, which I still believe very strongly in, but I wasn't serving me.
Right.
I was not getting any energy out of this. It was like a battery. I was at 0.
Yeah.
And then it's draining still, right? And so I had to
I don't
build.
know anything about this. That sounds at all familiar. Like,
I had to
can't
build
relate.
something.
Yeah.
I had to build something that I needed to build. And I've never prioritized me first.
Wow.
So I had to learn how to do that and get the confidence to know, like, whatever I'm building, if nobody else likes it, it's still good for me.
Right.
And all of that sucked. That was
Yeah.
like a shit show times a million.
So it sounds like we talk a lot about just mindfulness. It sounds like at that time, like present moment awareness had not found you. You're like, I built this thing. I'm indebted to all these people. I don't want to leave them without jobs. I have these clients. I have this stuff. Like, where does the reframe come in for you? How do you go from motivate the 50-person shop to now your new model is much more of an elastic model, right? Where these structures come together as your visions are changing and the client's vision are changing. Is that accurate?
No, that's exactly right. So what we basically did is we said there's work that we're known for, user experience, research and design. We do it well. We do it just like everyone else. There's a couple of tweaks to how we do it, but for the most part, you'll get reliable, steady work. I put a president in charge of that. And that was off of my plate. Then my job was to figure out, well, what is it that I want to do?
Right.
With my career and with Motivate, as the mother of Motivate. Like, what am I doing raising this child? And so I shifted to Insider Insight. And the reframe, for me, I have to think about where I'm going to be excited by it. That helped me get more excited by it. And then there were people who didn't fit these two businesses, right? They wanted to do something else. They were here for something else. And those were very respectful, I hope, conversations with them saying, this is what we're doing. If you don't want to work here and you don't want to work here, unfortunately, there's no place for you here. But using our staffing arm, UX Hires, will help you find the next thing. And we helped a lot of people just move into whatever they wanted to do. And that was hard, but one of the most, that was the biggest teaching moment of my career, like for me, that I put myself first. I know what I'm building. This is what I'm building. And then attracting people who want to build this versus here's who I have. Let me serve you and try to make this work for you. And I'm draining my battery.
What's interesting, I want to sort of build on that for just a second, if we could, is like the audience, you might not be able to feel, but I can feel it sitting across the table from you energetically. It's like, as much as I'm sure that some of the hardest times of your life and career were having those conversations with these people that you've developed these deep relationships with, I'm sure the audience is feeling like the sigh of relief, right? Like we're watching you rise as a result of it. So clearly the outcome versus that hard journey, right? That hard thing about hard things, like Ben Horowitz's book talks about, is this idea of overcoming that. But now it sounds like you're serving you and therefore better serving your people.
Yes,
better serving
100%.
your clients.
I love the way you said that. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. That's really interesting. I think I've been really nerding out lately on just mindfulness. It's been a big part of my journey, and meditating every day. One of the things I've reflected on is like, well, is this story I'm telling myself serving me or others? And then when I'm showing up as my true self versus like the self that I think I need to be, right? So I imagine there's days you walked into the office
100%.
as the lightning rod. It's like you stub your toe in the morning and people are like, oh my God, is the company failing? Your toe hurts, right? And I'm like, ugh. I just did that in another video recently, and I'm like, wow, we forget about that, right? So I'm excited now to hear, how is it trying to run an elastic company structure? You work with some of the biggest companies in the world. And I guess the question is, without having that horsepower, that traditional big agency staffing model, I mean, I think Accenture's UX team is what, a few hundred people or even bigger, right? So how does Motivate compete with these big Goliath companies, right? Like as a independent or a person out there, like how do we compete?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our positioning is different. So, you know, if you hire Accenture for a particular reason and they do a wonderful job, you hire Motivate for a completely different reason. I mean, Motivate from the very beginning has been about bolting on to in-house teams and then supporting them.
Right.
And so how would we know who to have on staff if we haven't met you yet?
Right.
You know, it's very custom how we approach our work with our clients. So they tell us this is what we need. Right. We then build a team to support that. We do have people full time, but for the most part, it's like I need a content writer who knows this thing.
Right.
Now, we may not have that person on staff in a larger agency model. This allows us to go find that person and say, look, give us 2 weeks, but we'll get you the exact person you're looking for. Another project, we needed like a story architect. You know, another project, we needed someone who had a ton of experience in biotech.
Yeah.
And so we're able to find people with specific skills. Again, remember, I have the staffing arm too. So that fuels this.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I didn't have that, this wouldn't be so easy in terms of the elastic model. But what this has allowed me to do as well is hear what clients are looking for and then modify what I'm doing accordingly versus have a menu of things that I sell and then
here's a body, here's a staff log. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So you know, I know this just from off camera with you, but like as an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a leader, as an author, like there's a lot of things that fill your battery or take away from it, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine. I'm excited to hear, you know, myself, I'm working on a book right now and it's really tough to make a priority. So one question I just have selfishly to ask is, well, one, what is the Reframe book? Like, tell the audience a bit about that.
Sure.
And then tell me just insider information, which we might not use this, but I'm using it.
Yeah.
Like, how can I, with all these things on my plate, prioritize writing a book?
Okay. Yeah. So Reframe is design thinking meets self-help. Essentially, it takes people through the design thinking process. And the main reason I wrote it is because there were a lot of startups at the time that would have benefited tremendously from an hour of my time telling them what to do first, second, and third, but I didn't have an hour for them. And so I wrote the book for people who would not work with Motivate, but should benefit from how we approach projects. So it takes them through the design thinking process, tells you a little bit about my story, and it also infuses the word can't and how people approach can and can't. Because to design something, especially to design something innovative or disruptive, you can't have can'ts. Right? You have to believe that the thing that you're doing is unique, it's special, it's worth spending time on. And if you're going to be very busy saying we can't do that, or it's never been done before, the budget's too high, or this is going to blow up my project plan, I hate that. Like it cramps my style, you know, as a designer.
We are a PM's nightmare.
Yeah, go away and let me come up with good stuff. And I needed more people thinking that way. So Reframe came up because I went to a client meeting, the client made me mad. And that passion is what drove the book. So my hack around this is get mad. You know, like use emotion to actually get the book done. Most of that book was written on Siri and a translation app. So I walked to work, I spoke into my phone, I had it all recorded and transcribed, and then I edited from there.
So you did the edit yourself? You didn't have
I did edit myself,
very cool.
So it was months of speaking into the phone, and then I worked with a partner from there to pull it all together because I wasn't telling the story in the way people needed to read it. I was telling it the way I would tell it, right?
Love that.
And so I needed help with that because that's not a skill of mine. But it's all fire, I guess, fire energy. You know, like it was all I'm pissed about something, so here I go on my rant, and then I would turn that into productive stuff. If I didn't have the emotion, I don't think I could have written that book.
We have a strange amount of things in common. For those that are behind the camera right now, like head nodding, those on the camera, you've had that moment. So I think, you know, we've covered a lot so far, right? We've talked a lot about the journey from having an idea to manifesting that idea. We've talked about being a design founder, right? I think now, finally, as designers, we're being respected in the boardrooms, the tables, right? You know, D-School and what Stanford did and IDEO did really validated a lot of what we did. Previous, we didn't have a place in the B-suite, right?
So I think make it look pretty.
Exactly, just make it look pretty, right? So I love that you're taking a different level of intention to that. What I really want to dig into, and I know the audience is exciting to hear, is when you think about research, you know, Mona and her team, the way that they think and approach research. Was supposed to be 45 minutes with her, turned into a 2-hour discussion. And I thought I understood research, and I think hopefully I offered some points where she was like, this kid's not a hack, or this guy's not a hack. But at the end of it, she really made me reframe the way that I look at research. So we all know that informed decision-making, informed design, no designer wants their work to not be effective, right? If you're a designer and you want your work to not be effective, you're an artist, right?
Yeah.
And those are amazing, right? Like, I wish I was an artist, I'm more of a designer. Help us understand, when you think about research, what is the insider insight product? What is the motivate product methodology that's enabled you to win and move the businesses forward of some of the greatest businesses in the world?
So I think maybe telling the story of how I had to reframe research might be helpful, because when about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we had a ton of research projects, right? Ethnography, where we go on site and we're in offices like this or trading floors or firehouses, looking at how people use products and then finding opportunities to improve those products. All that budget started getting cut for a number of reasons, but I think it was partially like design sprints, lean, agile methods, which was fail fast, just come up with it. There were a lot of startups that were saying, we don't use research, we never listen to customers, faster horse, blah, blah, right? So,
Pre-GV.
And so there was this, when you get into the real problem, which we're going to talk about this evening as well, the problem wasn't that research wasn't good. It was that it wasn't offering any insight. You know, I'm not learning anything new by doing this, so why bother? And a lot of times I would agree, right? There were cases where I felt like we did a big research project and the designers could have guessed at what we found. And so I dug into that. Why is it that we're not delivering insights? And a couple answers came to me.
I want to pause you for 1 second, right? So language is how we experience the world, right? So research, insight. What is an insight when you think of the word insight? Because I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Because insight for me is like the word strategic in business. It's like we attach the word strategic to everything because we want to sound smarter. Insights
You're in my head.
You're in my head. Tell me more about that.
I think we had the wrong definition of insight, right? There were a lot of like delivering insights. How would you deliver an insight? How do you know what I would find insightful? How do I know what you would find insightful? How do I make sure everybody in this room finds something insightful?
Conversation.
Insight to me happens when something clicks rationally and drives me emotionally. Also, I shouldn't have known it before. And so that violates what I just said earlier, right? So if it clicks rationally, it drives me emotionally, then that's a personal journey that someone needs to go on. My job is to create a platform where the person can have that journey. And again, like I said, Motivate's always had a more service leadership mindset, which is I cannot deliver you an insight. So now I'm going to stop trying. And instead, I'm going to create a playground for you to find things insightful.
We call it conditions of entry. So one of the things that we try to do with co-creation is we believe at Digital Surgeons that you can't do something for someone, you have to do it with them and in service with them. Because ultimately, whether we're designing for the end user or not, what we've discovered, and I've discovered after being in way too many of these agency meetings and being on both sides of it, is that ultimately, if you don't understand what the person values, how do you deliver value? Value is just this ephemeral thing, right? So I love that your definition of an insight. My question is, when you created that playground, you created that place where you could deeply understand what is insight to whom and how will it then be enabling the process or informing the process. Where was that moment where you had that aha moment? Now you're like, how do we do insights differently?
Well, the trick to finding something new is to go into spaces where you don't know. Right? And if I create an interview guide, if I create a recruiting script, I'm already controlling what I'm going to find. And so I had to get rid of those, which is a lot of conditioning as a researcher, because you're like, what? And most of my team freaked. But we got rid of that.
What do you mean we're not going to do a survey?
What do you mean that we're not going to control it? How are they going to ask a question? And we relied on personal connection and conversation, not interview. So Insider Insight's powered by personal connection and conversation. It's people talking to people who already know each other and use the authenticity and the rapport that's already been built to unpack a problem in their own words. And so they're looking for, so what they do for us is help us reframe the way we see the problem from the brand's perspective, which is we need more members, we need more purchases, we need more whatever, to the customer perspective, which is I need more blank. And then our job is to work with the brand to say, this is what they're saying. Let's figure out how to create value for them. So we shifted the power, the locus of control from a brand saying, tell me the answer to this. Here's my recruiting script to, hey, people, tell me what I should be doing. What would you pay me money to solve for you? Because guess what? People pay money to have problems solved for them, right?
Exactly.
So like, let them tell you.
Absolutely.
And so shifting that, Insider Insight basically ask people to have a conversation with people that they know. They give us the recordings. We transcribe it, analyze it, give it to the client in 2 weeks.
Right.
And so the speed is right for lean, agile thinking. The surprise is there because we didn't have any control over who was talking to whom and what they were talking about. And the insights is what the client is finding from the transcript, which gives them ownership over moving it forward.
So I love that you said that. And I think one of the things that ultimately brought us together, besides Carnegie Mellon and all that kind of good stuff, was this idea of trains, planes, and automobiles. Yeah. Awesome. Wow. That was a lot of trains.
All right.
Right. So you had all these insights. And obviously what I feel as though you design is what I like to think about is this idea of an insights continuum, right?
Yeah.
So instead of creating a linear methodology that is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can do this in a 5-day sprint, and there's some great stuff out there, right? However, it sounds like what you've done is identified and mapped out the players. Some people use words like ecosystem, but you mapped the players and then created a 2-way dialogue to interconnect them. And then in doing so, you've done that in a way that's faster and higher value from a delivery system with Insider Insights. I know you're also working on a product for that now, so it's self-serve, which I know this audience can't wait to check out. So you've got this Reframe book and you realize all these startups, all these people now are jumping in, UX practitioners, and they're getting that hour with you that they couldn't get because they couldn't afford it or whatever. So what motivated you to, literally speaking motivate, why write a kid's book? Because that kind of blew my mind. It's like, why write a kid's book?
Well, it may not be for kids. That's a little hint.
Okay. And that's called The Thing About Swings?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the point of the book. It's an elephant, Ava, who sees a playground and sees a swing set. She goes up to the swing set. She's excited to swing because who wouldn't be excited to swing? She sits on it and she breaks it. And so she's with her friends, very embarrassed, and basically, like most of us would, if you're an elephant, says, this wasn't designed for me, right? Well, the thing is, like, if things aren't designed for you, you have choices. You can take it, or you can come up with better ideas. So Ava decides, this is not okay. I deserve to swing like everybody else. So she comes up with ideas to design a better swing. Of course, she makes it strong enough for an elephant.
Right.
But then she makes it big enough so she can swing with her friends. She adds a timer so that there's equality and fairness. There's a temperature control so that you're never hot. She over-designs the swing. She comes up with lots of ideas. The entire time, there's this skunk who says, we can't do that. It's over budget. We can't do that. It's never been done before. We can't do that. It doesn't map to my project management plan. You can guess where these stakeholder skunks are inspired by.
I'm imagining a certain group of people now looking like a certain series of animals.
But you're annoying. And so, you have the elephant who is coming up with all these ideas. You have the skunk who's like, we can't do that. And that was the book many years, like 2 years ago when I came up with the concept. I came up with it to explain to the kids what Reframe was about. Last year, I added the orangutan. Okay. The orangutan just starts building stuff. And so, Ava, the elephant, is what-ifing. The skunk is saying we can't. There's a lot of discussion. And the orangutan just starts to build. And he's the one who creates this over-designed swing. And it's not good. Right. But it doesn't matter because guess what? He did something.
So he sort of created like 6 thinking hats, but in the form of a book. In a way that enables the parents that are giving this to their kids to really realize, holy crap, like, the fable in this for me is the fact that I need to think about myself differently.
Yes,
so
exactly.
So I mean, like any great Disney movie, right? So Disney movie on the cards in the horizon for the next few years. She's available. Yes. I love that. So we talked about Think About Swings. We talked about, let's talk about like, where is research going in your opinion? So we do a lot of work with Watson, a lot of natural language processing. I'm a firm believer that to really create the best data, it's about taking big data and small data and bringing it together.
Yes, I agree.
Right, and I don't mean qual and quant just to get overly simple, but what I more so mean is machines yet do not have a level of empathy or real-time adjustment. If you're talking to Sophia the robot, there's not the same level of value that one of your researchers is going to be able to garner. So what do you think next 5-10 years looks like for you, for Motivate, for the research industry? And if I'm a researcher or someone on the branding side, why would I want to plug into that future that you're
And
describing?
I love that you said, not oversimplifying, but I do think people map to this mental model, which is quantitative, which I think will move more towards robots and machine learning.
RPAs
because
and
they
all
just,
that. Yeah,
they move faster and they're better able to spot patterns and trends than humans.
Yeah.
What humans are great at is this qualitative side.
Right.
And you nailed the word, empathy. However, we're currently approaching research with a goal towards empathy, but perhaps not nailing it.
Yep.
And the reason why I'm excited about Insider Insight, and I think there's many other methods that we can invent in this space, is we have to get brands to use research to actually get empathy for the customers that they're serving. And so research, I believe, the qualitative research will move towards that direction. How do we hear the voices more authentically? How do we see people more authentically? How do we get below layers of what people say into the actual truth of how they make decisions? Not what they tell people, not what they tell you on a survey. I don't think that's where people are going to rely on in 5 years, because we're all starting to see that doesn't actually equate to usage. But where's the truth?
Yeah, I love that.
In behavior, and how do I find it and how do I access it? I think the other thing we talked about already is we're gonna need to go meet customers where they're at.
Yeah.
I don't think in 5 years or 2 years or maybe next year they're going to be coming to us, in focus group rooms, in these sterile environments that we create, that we need to study.
A stage 5 act or something.
Yeah,
For sure.
Even co-creation workshops. I think we're going to need to go to them so they feel the brand's desire to actually serve them.
Two things I want to talk about. I know we're running low on time, but I want to be mindful of that, which is I want to talk about bias. Because something that comes up a lot in our conversations is bias.
Yeah.
And I also want to talk, when you talk about Ava the elephant, the first thing that I thought of is the implications of inclusive design, which obviously is getting a much bigger name now, right?
Yeah.
So I would imagine there's probably some undertone of there by design.
Yes.
Help me understand, as a designer that might not be as research centric, how do I ask for better research or better insights? And I say, I'm putting my mindset in, if I'm a designer, I don't know about research, right? I come from the world of skunks and briefs and broken swing sets, right? Perfect. So help me understand, in your opinion, how do I navigate that as a designer or a marketer if I have no idea, besides hire and motivate, of course?
No. So what I love about designers and marketers is that as a stereotype, they are more willing to talk about the questions they don't have the answers to. Designers love that. Creatives love that. They're like, I wish I knew this. I wish I could answer this. I wonder if this. Start there. Because research is supposed to serve that. Right? We don't want research that doesn't serve that. We do want research that allows you to have these questions where you wish you knew the answer. And then researchers, or people acting as researchers, which can be designers, I think, have permission to go into that space and get the answer for the design team, for the creative team. So I feel like, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I believe that the designers and marketers already know the questions that they want to have answered. We just weren't answering them. And there wasn't enough acknowledgement of like, we don't know this.
Yeah. So I want to talk about a lot of this stuff because for me, the question I get a lot is, oh, I have imposter syndrome. I don't want to post this stuff. It's like, as a creative director or designer, I'm looking at something going, oh, this looks terrible. Like I'm filming something, it can't get published. Like color correction's bad, whatever. But what's interesting is some of the shittiest content, back to Insight, right? Some of the shittiest content that I thought was completely no value, I'm getting crazy, powerful engagement. I don't mean likes and comments. I mean like people like reaching out privately and saying, thank you so much. I'm going to start a content series. I'm going to be on a podcast now. I'm going to do this thing. So I feel like we as leaders have I said this on the last Forward Obsessed episode. It's like, I want to change the face, like literally, easy coming from a white guy, right? But I want to change the face of questions in business, because I feel like we get locked into roles, whether we start our own company or not, and we go through whatever linear progression path is expected of us. So you mentioned your family, you're like, I had to do a certain thing differently. As a CEO, these guys came up with this amazing platform for me called CEO where it's like, oh wait, like on a Friday night, I don't have kids yet, but on a Friday night, I'm in After Effects or I'm in design or I'm coding, because I'm trying to stay sharp and explore. Because I feel like if I can come at this from a 2 to 5 hours a week approach, for someone that's spending 60 hours a week or 40 hours a week doing it, I'm opening up new pathways for them because they're developing empathy for me, and then I can develop empathy for them. So one of the things that we'll dive into now, just if I'm imagining that the word comes up, is vulnerability. So vulnerability is often something in the research process that I feel is a big barrier to large corporations. So many of the consumer market insights teams that we've worked with, there is research is typically used to not validate, but to invalidate.
Yeah.
Right. So what I want to understand from your perspective is, how do you go into a research problem brief with a new client and approach it with as little bias as possible? No, you can't ever eliminate bias, right? Truly, because we're humans.
I agree.
But how do you reduce the bias, increase the vulnerability to create that environment that's not present in some of the traditional research practices that you and I know and dislike?
So I will tell you that if I were to group the people, so there's a segment that doesn't like insider insight, and it's typically market research and researchers. Right. Because what we're doing is just, we're Uber and they're taxi drivers, right? And like they don't love what we're doing because it does shift the model. I've tried to be as clear as possible that it's just another method. You can use it sometimes. You don't need to use it all the time. There's still cases for when you use more traditional research. We still use traditional research, but they're threatened. And the way that I've approached it, I think more recently, has worked, which is, what is a question that you wish you had the answer to? Now, if we all agree that this is the question, how might we design, get the answer to this? If we did a survey, what would we get? If we asked people to have a conversation, what would we get? And let's just be open to seeing it. And when they see it as an experiment, then they're willing to do it. Bias is an interesting word. We use bias, right? So you and I having a conversation about what it's like to fall down and get back up as a leader is going to be a very authentic conversation. Neither one of us have time to go talk to a market researcher right now about this. But you and I will make hours to talk to one another about it. That's what we're trying to use. Will you say something differently to me because we're friends? Maybe. Sure. But real products live here. Because if I have a product that actually saved me, if there was, whether it's QuickBooks or Capital One or Chase or Nike, which saved me when I was down and picked me up, I will share that with you. In real life.
And but now if I was like, tell me what you love about that coffee
on a scale of 1 to 10, how did Nike do for you? Exactly. And so,
what's the Net Promoter Score? I would likely promote Nike. And I will not burn my Nikes, even though this recent Colin Kaepernick ad. No,
it's we're trying to promote empathy, connection, curiosity, vulnerability in how we're approaching questioning. I'm trying to stay away from research altogether because there is a clinical.
It's a dirty word.
It is, but I love it. I have a design research background. I do love where it fits. It's just not enough sometimes.
What would you say it would be called? So one thing that's been, a friend of mine, big in language, and he was a classics PhD. Mike, I'm calling you out right now. And he talks to me a lot about words and etymology and those kinds of things. So I feel like certain words in our language are so just rife with just badness. They're heavy, and I think strategic is one of them, right?
Bias is another, insights another, research another.
Research. Fast forward motivates insider insight product, takes the world by storm.
Let's do it.
5 years. How would you define research, or what name would you attach to it through your genius?
I love this question. I'm struggling with, so I'll tell you where I am. There's humility coming to mind. There's unlearning and learning, curiosity. It's something in this realm, where it's service. I have the ability to serve you, a customer, by giving you something that will make your life better. I make money off of making your life better, but I don't do it. I'm a vessel. My company is a vessel to actually serve you. That, I don't know what the word is, and I need Mike. Hi, Mike, help me. But I don't know what the phrase or word is, but that's what I hope to leave here.
Thank you so much, Mona, for joining us today. Mona Patel, Motivate Design. She's on Amazon. Just give her a Google search. Everything will be in the links in the bio, of course. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you really want the audience to inquire into after this conversation?
The main thing, the most current thing is the Thing About Swings, the kids book. All the proceeds go to charity, and so I'd love any support from the design community on that. And I'd love your feedback on that as well. I mean, the book was written to help you explain what you do to people who don't know.
Love it.
And so I'd love that to be shared.
Awesome. Well, the Thing About Swings, jump in, amazing cause and amazing things. I think we can learn more from what we unlearn, and that's what we learned today from Mona, so thank you so much.